the story of Joseph. On this journey, you're going to go through many ups and downs. And I've got to be honest with you, it's going to get very, very bad before it gets very, very good. I just got to tell you the truth. Would you rather me give you some false notion of what this journey is like, or would you rather hear the truth? Now, the story of Joseph from the Bible, from Genesis, really inspires me because, like all of the other Bible stories, he's an archetype. He's a pre-incarnation of Christ. The Bible is a psychological drama. And as you walk this path of God mode, letting go of the deepest attachment of man, which is lust, you are freeing your soul to ascend to the heights of Olympus, to heaven. And you're going to find yourself relating very much to these archetypes, these powerful symbols, like the Jungian archetypes, which map out all of these different journeys we go on as ascending souls. Like what's described in the hero's journey. I was watching Spider-Man recently. Been getting into my hero movies. It's really just highlighting these points to me even more. And in this movie, Peter Parker he's in an English class. And in his class, the lecturer is talking about how there's only a certain amount of plots to any story, every single story we have. They all boil down to about 33 plots, 33 storylines. But if you dig even deeper, you can narrow it down to just one basic plot. One plot which is the root of all stories, all the stories we have. And that plot, that storyline is based on the question, who am I? That's what we're doing here. Beyond retention, beyond God mode, beyond your goals, your sense of purpose, all of this boils down to this basic question, which is deep in your soul, the most fundamental question. Who am I? Clearing out the throat. Now, the story of Joseph starts off with a young man, aged 17, living in the land of Canaan. And he's born to a family. His father's name is Jacob, also known as Israel. And he's got 11 brothers. And Joseph, being his father's youngest, is his father's favorite child, and he's treated with favor. And he's given a coat of many colors, this beautiful coat. And he wears this coat around his brothers, and they begin to get jealous of him. It gets even worse when he has a dream that he rises to the heavens and his whole family is bowing down before him and worshipping him. And he tells this to his brothers, who are shepherds. Now, this only makes his brothers hate him even more, and they begin to plot against him. This is what starts to happen as you rise in consciousness. You're going through this journey where you are becoming a brighter light. Your aura is magnifying, and it's going to make people uncomfortable. And there's an element of pride here which we've got to be very mindful and an element of awareness of how your energy affects people, because it's going to polarize people, meaning they are going to either love you or they're going to hate you. Just about the only thing they won't be able to do is be indifferent towards you. So Joseph's brothers plot against him, and at first they want to kill him, but then Reuben, one of the older brothers, says, we can't kill him, he's our flesh. Let's put him in a pit and leave him there, but don't shed his blood. So they take him and put him in a pit, and Reuben secretly wants to come back and rescue him later. But in the meantime, some Ishmaelite merchants are traveling through that land. The Ishmaelites were distant relatives of these brothers. And the Ishmaelites are heading to Egypt to sell their goods. So the brothers decide, let's sell Joseph to these merchants and be rid of him. So they sell their brother into slavery for 20 shekels, 20 pieces of silver. Do you see the parallels here between Christ and Joseph, also sold into slavery by his brothers? Judas. In the Joseph story, it's Judah. Notice the similarity in the names. So Joseph is taken down to Egypt, which is symbolic of the matrix, the world system, the physical separate from the Spirit of God, trying to do things through the physical means, living from the outside rather than living from the inside. Joseph is taken into this system, and there he is sold to a man named Potiphar, who is a leader of Egypt, one of Pharaoh's top-ranking officials. And so Joseph becomes a servant in the house of Potiphar. And it says that Potiphar noticed that Joseph was a exceptionally gifted man. And so he put him in charge of his whole house. And it says he doesn't even know what he owned. Potiphar didn't even keep track of his possessions because he trusted Joseph so much that all he knew that he had was the bread that he brought to his mouth. Besides that, everything was under Joseph's charge. So he went from a shepherd to a servant to the ruler of this man's house. Now, it says that Potiphar's wife began to notice that Joseph was very handsome. This is where the Jezebel spirit starts to come in on your journey. This is part of your story arc. This is part of your initiation as you are being put through these trials by God, because he's elevating you into a position of authority and power in this earth. He's revealing you as his son. That's his purpose here. That's your purpose here, is to be revealed as the Son of God. As he's living here and managing Potiphar's house, Potiphar's wife begins to be very turned on by Joseph. She tries to seduce him. And day after day, she says to him, "Lay with me." But Joseph says, "I cannot do this thing. Your husband, my master, has put me in command of everything he owns. So how could I sin against him and sin against God by doing this? I will not lay with you." This is the temptation of the dark feminine, who only wants to suck out this energy which you're building up, which you're accumulating. And so day after day, she persists, and eventually, when the guards, all of Potiphar's men, have left the house, and it's just Joseph and Potiphar's wife, she says to him, "Lay with me." And she takes hold of his garment. And he says no and flees, leaving his garment in her hands. Now notice again the pattern of the garment. First it was the coat of many colors. Now it's his servant's garment. Each time he's being stripped. Each time he's being brought back to basics. He's having his outer garments stripped off so that the deeper truth of who he is can emerge. So she calls the guards and says, "Guards, look what this Hebrew has done. Potiphar has brought this Hebrew here to mock us. Just now he asked me to lie with him, and when I said no, he ran." So she frames it as though Joseph tried to rape her. When Potiphar hears about this, he throws Joseph into prison. So now he's gone from being the governor of the house to a prisoner, living in a dungeon. You see this? It's just up and then deeper down, and then higher up and then deeper down. So now Joseph becomes favored in the dungeon because the prison master sees that Joseph is a gifted and favored man. He sees that the Spirit of the Lord is upon Joseph. His aura is so strong, pure and powerful that even in prison he becomes a master. And so Joseph becomes the servant in the prison, taking care, watching over all of the other prisoners, taking responsibility for all of the other prisoners. Then eventually one day, Pharaoh's chief butler and chief baker are thrown into prison. Apparently they pissed off Pharaoh. And so they're in the prison, and then one night they have a dream. Both of them have a dream. And in the dream, some things happen. I can't actually remember how the dreams go. But they're both very disturbed by their dreams. And so in the morning, they are talking about it, and Joseph says, "What is this dream you've had? Tell me about it. Is not God the interpreter of all dreams?" And so the chief butler and the chief baker tell Joseph their dreams, and he interprets them for them. To the butler he says, "Your dream means that in 3 days' time, you're going to be restored to your position as Pharaoh's butler. You're going to be raised up." And to the baker he says, "In 3 days' time, you're going to be called out of prison and you're going to be executed." And so, true to his word, in 3 days' time, both men are called out of the prison. The baker is executed and the butler is restored to his former position. Now, 2 years pass. Joseph is in prison for another 2 years. And one night, Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, has a very disturbing dream. And when he wakes up in the morning, he's extremely distressed because he doesn't know what his dream means. He summons all of his chief magicians, his sorcerers, his soothsayers, his wise men, and none of them can interpret his dream. And at that moment, the butler is serving some wine to Pharaoh, and he remembers Joseph, and he says, "Your Majesty, while I was in prison, there was a man there who interpreted my dream, who told me that I would be restored to my position in 3 days' time. And just as he said, it has happened. This man can interpret your dream." And so Pharaoh summons Joseph out of prison, brings him into the court, and he says, "I've heard that you can interpret dreams. Is this true?" Joseph says, giving the glory to God. God is the interpreter of dreams. Tell me your dream. And so Pharaoh tells him the dream. There's actually 3 different dreams. But in the dream, one of them, there are 7 fat cows eating beside the Nile. And these fat cows are eating and drinking. And then along comes 7 skinny cows, malnourished, sickly, weak. And they come to these 7 fat cows and they eat them. They devour them. And there's another couple of dreams that Pharaoh tells, and they all mean the same thing. And Joseph says, these dreams are one. They all have the same meaning. The meaning is that for the next 7 years, this land, and actually the whole world, is about to go into a famine. A time of plenty. For the next 7 years, there'll be abundance through the land. There'll be plenty of food, there'll be plenty of good weather, plenty of rain, and the crops will be abundant. The yield will be abundant. And he says, following the 7 years of plenty, there will be 7 years of famine. There will be no food. There will be no growth, no crops. It'll be a very, very difficult time. Many will starve. And so Pharaoh says, what shall we do? And Joseph says to him, you must select a man of wisdom and put him in charge and have him gather up the crops, gather up the supplies for 7 years, store them in storehouses to prepare for the famine. Then when the famine hits, you'll have an abundance of food to get you through the 7 skinny years so that the people can survive. And so Pharaoh says, you will be that man. I am putting you in charge of all of this. No one will stand up or sit down without your say-so in all of Egypt, and you'll be second only to me. So Joseph is promoted from a prisoner living in a dungeon to the second most powerful man in Egypt, the most powerful nation in the world at that time. Can you see the power of this story? Pharaoh puts on him a signet ring, symbolizing his acceptance into the royal family. And he gives him linen robes. He dresses him in linen garments, symbolic of the Messiah, of the Savior. It's another foreshadowing. This is his ascended state. This is his Saiyan state. He's gone from wearing the coat of many colors, symbolic of the 7 colors of the chakras, showing us that Joseph was an awakened being from the beginning, but he had to go through the trials. He had to go through the stripping process, the character building process. Then he wore the garments of a servant, which were stripped from him by Potiphar's wife, attempting to seduce him into adultery, into lust. But he beat that test. He overcame that test. Then he wore the garments of a prisoner, his final test. But even in the prison, Joseph maintained his integrity, his connection to God, and he was put in charge even of the prison. So finally, he was given the garments of righteousness, the wedding garments, the linen garments, just like that which Christ wore during his ministry, garments of linen, which were divided by the Roman soldiers at the time of his crucifixion. This is the journey. And Joseph then became the most powerful man in Egypt, only second to Pharaoh. And he was able to save millions of lives, not just in Egypt, but throughout the world, including those of his own family, his 11 brothers who had been living in guilt and shame for these years that they hadn't seen their brother, assuming he was dead. During the time of the famine, eventually came to Egypt to buy grain for their families, and there was Joseph, the second most powerful man in the world. And they bowed down to him and they worshipped him just as in his dream. The circle was completed. He saved his family. He saved the nation. He saved nations because he was obedient to God. This is what's at stake, kings, brothers. This journey isn't just about you getting a stronger aura, pulling more women, getting more money, getting more opportunities, getting more confidence. All of these things are nice, but even these things can become a stumbling block. As I'm becoming more magnetic, it's just naturally happening as I walk this path, I'm noticing there's more opportunities for pride, for lust to creep in. There's more opportunities for my mind to deceive me and tell me that I'm better than other people, or I'm this or I'm that. This will happen on this journey, and you've got to be very mindful of this because it will very quickly suck you back into hell, back into the dungeon. You've got to remember that we are all on this journey asking ourselves this question, who am I? And the answer to that, your final form, is you are Christ. This is why Jesus said, even when you offer a cup of water to one of these little ones, you are doing so to me. Because Christ is in each and every one of us. We are all on this journey of awakening to who we really are. We're all one being expressed in many different ways. So maintain your integrity, maintain your faith, maintain your connection to God. Spurn the Jezebels. They ain't nothing. But inside, they're actually Christ. But on the outside, they're hosting demons. Do not go with them. Do not succumb to their flattery. You'll get flattered by many women. All of a sudden, you've gone from maybe never having women in your life to getting treated like a king, like a celebrity. I've got guys in the community saying this. They're getting treated like celebrities now because they're practicing God mode. This shit is no joke. It's real. So keep walking the path. And if you want support, if you want a brotherhood, if you want kings around you who are on this same path, not just semen retention, not just no-fap, God mode. We are walking the path of God. We are being called to our highest potential. Then jump in the community, Sons of God. The link is in the description and in the pinned comments. I'm looking forward to seeing you in there. Much love, Kings.